Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Pleased to have you all on board. Thank you to you guys who've joined up and signed up for Patreon. That's really, really helpful. Trying to bring you as many of these as possible and hopefully on lots more topics soon, just to branch out and to create a lot of entertainment because we all need it in these times. So by request, we have Klaus Schwab's chart. Now, I didn't think it was going to be particularly interesting, but it turned out to be very interesting. So let's jump right in and have a look at this silly old fool's chart. So what we have here now, he's born 30 March 1938, so he's an Aries. Time wasn't known, but he's born in Ravensburg, Germany, and I've put his time at 12:30 p.m. simply because it fitted in quite well. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find out what star sign his wife was or any kind of other details, and I think his Wikipedia site's been cleansed, of any details that will provide a little bit more interest. It's quite stark at the moment. Now, why I think this is an appropriate chart, because he is kind of a narcissistic psychopath, and you get a lot from this particular time and from the aspects going on. So things I want to focus on is a Pluto at the end of Cancer, just in the 12th house, conjunct a Leo Ascendant. I do think the Leo Ascendant fits him because he loves dressing up in those silly costumes. He loves accepting those meaningless fake awards. He loves to hang out with the beautiful people. I think he epitomizes that thing that George Galloway said, that politics is show business for ugly people. He's a wonderful epitome of that. I mean, he's full of it. He exhibits all the kind of self-aggrandizing, grandiose, fake, a bossy show-off side of Leo rising. He's got all the bad things of Leo rising going. Obviously thinks an awful lot of himself, or maybe not. So I wrote down a few notes as well that I want to miss out when I talk about his I'll come back to that. I think it's rather interesting that he has Sun conjunct Saturn, because we often talk in relation to this global cult, everything that's going on. They are a Saturnian cult. They worship the planet Saturn. Saturn symbolism is saturated throughout all these elite organizations, the church, industry, corporate life, governments. It's saturated with Saturn, and they kind of seem to resonate with that planet. So it's quite interesting that he has Sun conjunct Saturn. I think it's highly appropriate that his Sun is on the midheaven along with Saturn, simply because he's pushed himself into this position of self-importance where he wants to kind of be boss, be top of the tree, be head of kind of the whole corporate industrial complex, if you like. And because when Sun is on the midheaven with Saturn like that, it indicates family lineage, that he comes from a prominent family, that his parents were very influential in his life. And if you look back, there's an article because this is the first one I'm doing on Schwab. I'm going to do a follow-up on his history, which is very interesting. And there you'll find out that his grandfather was a machinist, and he sort of got the family business going, which was started in Germany, but then it kind of grew in Switzerland. Then they moved it back to Germany. His father was very involved in engineering, and his father was involved in the business. Now, what they won't tell you, but it was in this article I'm going to share with you in the following broadcast, was that his father's company, that was originally started by the grandfather, did really well in Nazi Germany. In fact, they were one of the Nazis' up-and-coming companies, and they were in this kind of special group or club of favored companies or industries because they were working with all sorts of important stuff like technology and engineering, which was very, very convenient for the Nazis. Now, there was even a link between them developing heavy water in Norway to be used in the first atomic bomb that Germany was developing, and there is talk that his father's company was involved with that. And then afterwards, his father's company was also involved in dealing with the apartheid government in South Africa. So they've always kind of been dealing with almost rogue elements, if you want to see it that way. So then Schwab comes along. Obviously, the family then has an enormous amount of wealth, prestige. They're very well known in the kind of engineering world. And so he's born, and he follows in their footsteps, as you can see by that. I think the fact that Sun is conjunct Saturn in Aries gives a nod to the fact that he comes out of the kind of engineering, mechanical world. And Mars conjunct Uranus in Taurus also speaks to me of two things: economics extremism, right-wing extremism, which is like corporate extremism, because when you've got Uranus in Taurus, there's always a hint of kind of more of the what they would call the right-wing extremism, which is incredibly authoritarian and fascist. So I'd say that is quite a fascist statement, a little placement there. And you can see that there's a lot of planets going on in the 10th house. That's why he's on the public stage, that he's always talking. Everything about him is the external. Look at all these planets sort of, at the top half of the chart. Yeah, he's always out there. His whole life, he's been sort of cushioned, mentored. His other mentor was, of course, Henry Kissinger. So fantastic symbolism there for mentors. Sun conjunct Saturn on the MC, and your mentor is Kissinger, and he kind of groomed him. Now, we know in the background you've got the people like Ray Kurzweil and that guy from Jerusalem University, Harari, who are pushing all the kind of highly technical side of the fourth industrial revolution. That's it doesn't change the world, it changes you. That's the sort of engineering people from the inside out, colonizing their bodies with nanoparticles to change the whole nature of humanity. That's not really coming from him. He's more on the economic side and the old-fashioned kind of corporate and engineering side. So yeah, so I think, like I say, it's quite interesting. Mars conjunct Uranus in Taurus also suggests to me sort of forward thinking in terms of money and economics, and again, engineering and innovation. And all these are the things that he's been totally involved in the time. And his fourth industrial revolution, of course, involves all these sorts of things, the changing of society, all about technology, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite interesting as well that Pluto is on the ascendant, because he has this great need to surround himself with powerful, kind of power-hungry people, the plutocrats of the world. He loves to be surrounded by power. He's got absolute craving for power. And do you know that when you look at his sun, when his progressed sun was conjunct this Mars-Uranus conjunction, right, when it had moved by progression to conjunct that, was the exact time he set up the World Economic Forum. And as you can see, Jupiter by solar arc was conjuncting this 2 years ago when COVID started, which is his coup d'etat in the world was COVID, isn't it? So that was the time where he finally launched his plan for the fourth industrial revolution onto the stage, as signified by Jupiter conjuncting that. Now you can say, will this be successful? Well, let's look at this. Mars is in its fall in Taurus because, of course, it's co-ruler of Scorpio. Uranus is exalted in Scorpio, so it's in its detriment in Taurus. So those two are in their fall and their detriment. Sun is obviously in Sun is neutral, but Saturn is also in its detriment in Aries. So then you've got a couple, and here Neptune, which is opposite his moon, which I want to talk about now, is in its detriment in Virgo. His moon is heavily afflicted, and his moon is in Pisces. So this gives us a clue to his pathology. This is definitely a sign of psychopathic narcissistic personality disorder. Now, while some people with moon in Neptune are so empathetic and so compassionate that they virtually can't live their own life properly because they're so involved in other people's problems and so compassionate and so giving, it can go the opposite way, where you get someone with Mars opposite Neptune who is totally cold, callous, has absolutely no empathy at all. And it all stems from the fact that although he has all the self-aggrandizing Leo side, he feels that big. Inside, he feels so small, so weak, so insignificant. He is incredibly hung up. And that's where it all comes from. And narcissistic people usually carry this dreadful insecurity. That's why they become so controlling. So he does, in this chart, as we can see, have many of the traits of the psychopathic narcissistic disorder. And like we've talked about, the self-aggrandizement, the needing honors and all these fake awards. He's conceited. That Sun conjunct Saturn on the midheaven, conceited, feels superior, thinks he's better than everyone, thinks he's got all the answers, thinks he knows better than everyone else. He really looks down on other people as small and insignificant, and him and his cohorts, those that he surrounds himself of some sort of superior beings that are going to transcend and whatnot. No empathy, very insecure. He's totally disconnected. He does live in a bit of a fantasy world, and I think this whole Industrial Revolution is more fantasy than anything. He's got a very weak moral compass, and that means he can't decipher the difference between what's totally fantastic and fantasy and what is actually achievable. And I think he's got totally carried away with his fantasies, and because he surrounds himself with sycophants, no one's ever said, hey bozo, your plan's crap, and no one's buying it and no one's going to go along with it. Vain, definitely, both with the sun up here, Leo rising with Pluto rising, and this incredible insecurity that he has. Moon in Pisces opposite Neptune in its fall in Virgo. Lots of vanity there. He's deluded, and this also shows pathological lying, very dishonest. He can't be honest with himself because he lies to himself, so he has to lie to everyone else as well. Huge ambition, indicated by Sun conjunct Saturn, and he has an enormous amount of energy. And with Venus conjunct Mercury, he can be quite diplomatic. He can schmorm people if he wants to. He can, that goes with the lying as well, because there's a part of him that's actually quite childish. I feel that at a level he's emotionally extremely immature. There's a very childlike, childish side to him. That's why people can easily play on his ego and manipulate him. So as much as he wants to manipulate us, he's incredibly easy to manipulate and control, which is probably why Kissinger chose him as an understudy kind of thing. So as you can see, he's got Mercury and Aries in a pretty tight square, because they're both at 27 degrees of the respective signs, to Cancer, which is on the Ascendant, and this is being triggered right now by transiting Pluto, which is in Capricorn. There you go, transiting Pluto is right now in Capricorn, directly opposite natal Pluto, and that is would also be squaring Mercury, right? He's got a very penetrating mind. He's quite analytical, so he's quite probably good economist and good with engineering, but he's very harsh in speech and thought. I know he has a kind of diplomatic, schmarmy side, but inside he's quite ruthless and cruel in the way he thinks through things. Cunning, calculating mind. Yes, he is very strategic. He's incredibly manipulative, but like I say, easily manipulated as well. Loves acting in secrecy and plotting, which is kind of what he's been doing all along. He has a desire to shape others to his worldview. So there's a very domineering, controlling side. He doesn't just want to control people, he wants to control their minds. He's obsessed with control. And a very strong willpower that can be used very destructively as well. He's quite insidious. And let's talk about, again, Moon opposite Neptune, a lot of internal confusion. Could have been abused as a youngster, possibly. Could have been alcohol abuse in the family, a lack of feeling of love, a lack of feeling of warmth, security. He wasn't nurtured. He had a feeling of loss when he was young, and that has led to him feeling such a void inside, and he's trying to fulfill it in this way. With Pluto on the Ascendant, just in the 12th square Mercury, it could be also an interest in the occult, which, basically we can see, and that often goes with abuse. So it could have been something of the occult going on. We know the Nazis were very interested in the occult, so maybe in his childhood there was some sort of occultic abuse, which has contributed to his pathology. He's extremely impressionable. That's why I think he's so easily controlled by Kurzweil, Harari, Kissinger, whoever. So I wouldn't say he's the genesis of these ideas. He's absorbing them without even realizing it, actually. He's almost like hypnotized. He's so full of it and so full of his ego that he thinks these are all his ideas, but they've really been planted in there. He's drawn to cults simply because he needs a sense of belonging. I just want to go to this article and just see if you can also see it there. You can indeed. This is called whatsmyalternative.com, Neptune in the Natal, from Glamour to Illusion. It discusses the Moon opposite Neptune dynamic. It mentions here a belief that one is suffering from injustice and a need to punish society for the perceived injustice. He does kind of want to punish society. It's almost like he's taking out his internal fears and anxieties and upsets and wants to punish us. It says here, a belief in cooked up data, a belief in one's own lies while selling something, and a total lack of empathy. I think that's totally true, and he is believing lies. It's kind of rubbish, this fourth industrial revolution. It's all nonsense, and I think this proves to us that this isn't going to happen. This is going to fall apart, because what he's selling is nonsense. He believes in it because he's a fantasist. He believes his own lies. He believes cooked up data. So this confirms to us that this whole fourth industrial revolution is a nonsense, and he's just promoting it because he believes in it, because he's got this angst against society. Talks about chasing the loved one, which we won't worry about his love life. I think at 82 we can totally forget about his love life. Hearing voices in the head, imaginary friends, escapism, probably is some of that going on. Depression, because he doesn't fit in with society. Depression from social hypocrisy or from emotional abuse. Could have had emotional abuse when he was young. Definitely has this thing against society. It says imagining situations that did not occur, making false promises, and then, creating more false promises to back that up. It shows that he is living in a bit of a fool's paradise. For all this bravado and all these honors and all the supposed power he has, turns out he's really a fool in a fool's paradise following fantasies. It says there, excessive suspicion, obsession, compulsive fears, fear of honesty and objectivity, paranoid. We're talking about someone who's paranoid, and it mentions megalomania and narcissistic personality disorder. So it's not just me. This particular website has analyzed Moon opposite Neptune, and they pretty much agree. They say other important placements are placements of Pluto and Mars as well. But you can read that article, see what you think. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Let's go back to the chart here. Let's see if you've got it on the screen. Isn't that amazing? This is a most fantastic analysis of Klaus Schwab. I'm so glad that someone asked me to do his chart. Thank you for that. Next big whammy. All the major planets are affecting his chart right now. So we have transiting Pluto. I'm sorry, these are the arcs on the outside. But we all know transiting Pluto is at the end of Capricorn. It's directly opposite natal Pluto. Uranus is currently conjunct his Uranus conjunct Mars in his 12th house there in Taurus. Saturn is, of course, it has been squaring that position. I don't know if Saturn is doing something at the moment, because Saturn is conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius. So we've got Uranus is conjunct this goodie. Saturn is conjunct Jupiter, amazing. And Jupiter is conjunct the moon in Pisces. So it's all three conjunctions and a major opposition by all those planets. It's quite crazy. So it's Pluto, Saturn on here, Jupiter on here, Uranus on here, and Neptune as well is conjuncting the moon. So there you go. 5 major conjunctions all at once. I find that incredible. It shows that he is at a pivotal time, but all these are negative conjunctions because they all trigger. This triggers an opposition. This triggers 2 planets that were in their fallen detriment. This is obviously an opposition here. But you see that Neptune-Jupiter thing is absolutely magnifying his delusion. He's totally deluded and paranoid because we have Pluto square Mercury, as well as being opposite Pluto. So transiting Pluto is making him double down, get more controlling. He is dangerously out of his mind at the moment. Who knows what he could do? He is super paranoid, freaked out, rattled. Obviously, things are not going their way. I mean, I know people have different opinions on Putin. Some people think he is with the World Economic Forum and he's playing along. And, these are all legitimate avenues of thought to go down. But looking at that, I'd say this guy's freaked out. He's panicked. He's rattled. He's, I think I mentioned paranoid. He's not thinking clearly. He's not getting good information. He's allowing himself to be dragged along into a ridiculous fantasy. I think people are definitely controlling him, but he at this stage is so confused. He doesn't even know what to trust. He doesn't know what's going on. I think this whole New World Order is in a thorough mess. It's a catastrophe. It's run away with them. It's like a runaway train and they can't control it anymore. And I think this is his swan song. This is definitely the denouement of the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I think the reading of this chart should give us an awful lot of confidence that this whole thing is going to hell in a handcart. I don't think they are going to build back better at all. He is freaked out, and this is definitely decimating his image, his aspirations. and his power structure, his whole fakery and his whole crap power structure is all being exploded, imploded. So I think this whole thing is falling apart. Obviously, there are a lot of people that have decided they want nothing to do with this. They aren't playing ball. Putin's probably not the only one, and I think a lot of people are going rogue. They've been found out. They panic. They don't feel in control at all. But unfortunately, on one hand, they might get more desperate now that they see things are going to pot. So guys, wow, that was explosive. That was a brilliant analysis. I really enjoyed doing it. We got in an awful lot from it, didn't we? So there you go. Klaus Schwab's natal chart. And that was a revelation.